You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a historical, chronological, true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss cases from each year, starting in 1800. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
We're back from
Yay! Tag team back again.
From a super unexpected hiatus.
A long one.
We really appreciate you guys being super patient with us.
Sorry you missed us.
So sorry about that.
We missed each other. Or I missed you. Surely you missed me.
Yeah.
Oh, that did not sound genuine at all. Let's try it again. Surely you missed me.
100%.
There you go.
1,000. We had, it's been since Thanksgiving. We've talked to you guys. So I hope all of your holidays were fantastic and wonderful. We had to take, or really I had to take a bit of a mental vacation. It was very unexpected. And
life.
Yeah. One, wow, the amount of changes that can happen in 1 month. Two, I needed a little bit of a mental break, a mental vacation, if you will. I needed
because she's mental.
Well, we all know that, but I needed to take some time for me to kind of like reset and refocus and kind of get back on track. And, we're big advocates of mental health for sure. And so sometimes you unexpectedly have to take a step back for a little bit and realize I'm doing too much.
And I'm very proud of you for seeing that and taking care of that, because Kayla is good at pointing that out to other people, but not good at recognizing that in herself. So,
and
I don't have an applause button.
I know
for you. I'm very proud of you.
I had to go out of town for work, and when I came back, boy, it hit me like a ton of
a wrecking ball.
Like it was, man, it hit hard. I think that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, was me going out of town. And then when I got back, it was just my energy levels, mental levels, everything just crashed.
Well, added with the holidays and all the extras on top of it,
it was a lot. So I greatly appreciate y'all sticking in there with us. Some of y'all reached out to us, checked in on us. I greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate y'all being so patient and kind. But we're back. In the spirit of being back, I will say, for probably the next couple of months. I haven't even really told Leah about this yet. I forgot. We didn't talk for a complete hour before this. Probably for the next month or so. I'll say 2 months. I'll say probably maybe till the end of March. What we're probably going to do is we're going to be bi-weekly for a little bit, but our episodes that come out will probably be longer than what we've been doing. So I think that'll be good for a little bit, just to kind of get back. I'm trying to slowly ease back and not, and I have a lot of big changes coming up in between now and like the end of March that I also am going to have to put some mental, energy towards. So I don't want to over push myself.
And we all know who the brains in the operation is. So I mean, I'm only here for your enjoyment. That's my job as the comic relief and reactionary co-host. Kayla's the brains.
It takes a lot to write episodes, and it takes a lot to research, and do all the other stuff on the back end. So we might throw an extra one in there every now and then, just depending on how it goes. But I don't want to set like an expectation at this point of that. So what we're probably going to do, what we're probably going to do for now is we'll do every other week. We'll still do come out on Mondays, just like we have been. But I think that'll be good for now, just to kind of still we hit the reset button, and now we're just kind of like slowly waking up. So I think that will be good. And
That's how I wake up anyway. Ask anybody who's ever been on a trip with me. Don't expect me to just pop up. You got to give me some time.
So, I greatly appreciate all of the kindness and the kind words that were sent, and greatly appreciate y'all sticking through the next couple of months with us. Like I said, we'll still be here. We'll still be in your feed, I promise. Just not as much. And then I promise we will fully be back.
And let's go ahead and get out of the way. I'm getting over a sickness, so I'm so sorry that I have this smoker of 30 years voice. Sorry, I'm not silky smooth like normal.
Some people, it could be that could be some people's thing. You never know.
Well, it could be like Phoebe's sexy voice.
Yeah.
This is my sexy voice.
We've been sick. It's just been one thing after another.
Yes. But we're back.
So,
and I'm ready.
Yes. And because I said we're doing kind of an every other week thing for now, I kind of reformatted our episodes back to the way that we did them previously. So probably since we're going to do every other week, like I said, these episodes will probably be a little bit longer than what they have been. Because we're going to kind of cram a year into an episode now. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to kind of play around with this, but we're going to kind of do the full year, people and everything, and then dive into our case, kind of like we did it in the beginning. But that way we're not taking like a week break in between and then kind of forgetting everything that was going on in that 1 year.
We forget something? Us? Me? You don't forget me. All me.
I am an elephant.
No comments there.
They're very intelligent creatures. So let's get back into it. Our sources for this week, we are starting off with I would say bang, but that is a little bit too on the head. Star-Spangled Scandal, Sex, Murder, and the Trial That Changed America by Krista Rose and the Women History blog. Those are the two main sources we have for this week. I will say, I do know for our regular listeners of this podcast, I do know this case was recently covered. I'll say recently, within the past 2.5 months, 3 months. It was covered very, very briefly on an episode of Morbid. That's Ash and Elena. And I do know it was briefly covered. It was in an episode, for those like trying to refresh your memory. They've done some recently where they've had guests on, and then they've each covered like a small section of history. And they did this one. It was a very brief one, and actually Elena talked about it. So I do know that this was covered. I recall them talking about this. I will say I did not get any of my research from them on this. These are the two sources that I used mostly. There are a pretty good bit of sources that are out there, just depending on what you're looking for. But just to kind of let people know, if you're thinking like, where have I heard this kind of recently, that might be where it is. So we are in the year 1859 this year. So our events in 1859, January 5th, the North Star became the first steamboat to sail up the Northern Red River in America.
Didn't know there was a Northern Red River.
Who knew?
Learn something
every day.
Right out of the gate.
January 23rd, the Mauna Loa volcano in Hawaii began an eruption that lasted 300 days.
Wow.
Just a casual 300.
Almost a year.
February 14th, Valentine's Day of this year. Oregon, it's not Oregon, it's Oregon, was admitted as the 33rd state of the United States. February 28th, Arkansas or Arkansas.
I said it in my head when I spell it.
The Arkansas legislature forced freed slaves to decide between exile or slavery.
Well, that was very kind to give them a
choice. So just
gave them a choice. I mean,
man, people are garbage. I mean, it is just astounding sometimes.
Kayla, they got to choose.
Yeah, God, it's awful. In keeping with the awfulness, March 2nd and 3rd, the Great Slave Auction occurred. It is the largest single sale of slaves in the United States history. It took place with more than 400 people sold near Savannah, Georgia. This is great. Fantastic. So, and also, if you recall, which I know a lot of people do, and I know Leah does, back to our episode about Patty Cannon and how they were taking freed slaves that had made it, escaped slaves that had made it to the northern border. They were taking them back, and they were either taking them back to their quote, I know this is not a good word, but quote owner.
It's better than the other word that people use for that.
Yeah, I can't, I don't know. And if somebody does, please tell me, but I don't know of a better term to insert right there. For a reward, or they would just send them to these massive slave auctions. And they would get sold. They would, get paid from a slave auction as a kind of a reward for, being a garbage person.
Or just find a person of color and say, hey,
exactly.
I think you need to go back to the South. Whether they could have been born free.
Which also occurred. That's what 7 Years a Slave was about. Like he was not a slave. He was born a freed person. So yeah, yes, very much so.
I can't.
Yes. March.
So much anger.
It's a lot. March 21st, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania issued the charter establishing the Zoological Society of Philadelphia, the first organization of its kind in the United States and founder of the nation's first zoo.
That makes me happy.
May 31st.
I love a zoo.
The zoos are, it depends. Depends on the zoo.
Well-kept zoo.
Well-kept. Ethical zoo. Yes. Ethical is the word that I'll use.
Ethical, well-kept, ethical. You know what I mean.
Yes. May 31st, the Philadelphia A's organized the play Town Ball, which became baseball 20 years after. June 12th, Comstock silver lode was discovered in Nevada. Apparently, it's Nevada.
Yes, I've heard it pronounced that way.
I say Nevada. But Nevada, which was the first major silver discovery in the United States. June 28th, I put not in the U.S., but super important.
Okay.
The first dog show was held in Newcastle, England.
Very important.
I had to put that in there.
I'm glad you did.
June 30th, French acrobat Charles Blondin became the first to cross Niagara Falls on a tightrope.
That just terrifies me. That just makes me draw up all over.
Better than the Grand Canyon. At least you got water to fall into. I mean...
Yeah, but when you hit it from a certain height, it doesn't matter if it's water or not. It's still going to be like concrete that you're falling on.
I mean, true, but there's hope.
Look at you holding out hope. You being the optimist. Kind of. What's happened here?
I don't know.
New people.
I don't know if it's an optimist if I'm thinking of which way would be better to die. But, if you want to go with that, I'm good with that.
Well, I was saying certain death and you were saying it was bad. I'm just saying,
who knows?
Oh, how the turntables have turned.
How the turntables. July 1st, the first intercollegiate baseball game was played between Amherst and Williams colleges. July 12th, The paper bag manufacturing machine was patented by William Goodall in Massachusetts.
Well, now.
August 17th, the first air mail in a hot air balloon took off from Lafayette, Indiana.
Lafayette.
And what's funny is here we have, I think, is it a county that we have that's Lafayette? I think it's a county.
Yeah,
I always hear good old James Spann say Lafayette. So who knows? They could say it that way too. But either way. August 27th, the first successful oil well was drilled near Titusville, Pennsylvania by Edwin Drake.
I like that name.
So I like the last name Drake. That seems fun. August 28th, a geomagnetic storm caused the aurora borealis to shine so brightly that it was seen clearly over parts of the United States, Europe, and even as far as Japan.
Wow.
Yes. In September, just September of 1859,
it's a great month.
Joshua Abraham Norton proclaimed himself Emperor of the United States in San Francisco.
Is that something one can do?
No.
Oh.
No longer. No.
Man.
September.
I'm playing for next week.
September 1st, the first Pullman sleeping car went into service.
Oh.
September 2nd, we have two events. The first, a solar superstorm affected electrical telegraph services. And
sounds like an emergency.
And gas lighting was introduced in Hawaii.
Gaslighting is not nice. It's not nice to gaslight people.
It's not. And it's honestly interesting that they introduced that as a psychological phenomenon so long ago when it's like only become relevant in the past.
And they started it in Hawaii? Why Hawaii?
Anyway. They could be talking about streetlights.
Oh.
There you go.
I've been sick, remember?
September 20th, George Simpson patented the electric range.
Oh.
A lot of people thank him for that.
I don't like gas ranges. I mean, I know they're supposed to cook better or whatever, but I don't know. That flame, I don't.
I have a boyfriend that does that, so I wouldn't know. October 16th, abolitionist, this guy again, John Brown leads 21 men on a raid of the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. On November 2nd, he was found guilty of murder, inciting slaves to revolt, and treason against the Virginia territory during his raid. And he was sentenced to be hanged.
Yes, he was.
November 1st, the current Cape Lookout Lighthouse in North Carolina was lit for the first time. And
it was a fun time, huh?
It was lit. And our undated event for 1859, the University of Michigan Law School was founded.
Oh, okay.
Good times. And on to our births in 1859. January 25th, we have Lily, I think it's Edgington Warren. She's an American educator and author of Work Upon Defective Speech. She's the inventor of the Warren method of expression reading and numerical cipher. This method was a patented series of pictures of the expressions of the facial muscles produced by articulate speech, by which it was possible for a deaf person to understand conversation by the eyes alone.
That is cool.
He created the method of showing deaf people the facial expressions and mouth movements to be able to read lips.
That's awesome.
I thought that was really cool. It's like a weird way of explaining it.
Yeah.
But it's a really, really cool thing. You always wonder, like, that's just kind of something people do, but then you realize, like, no, that's not. No. Like someone, no, people don't just do that. Somebody had to figure that out. She was an Aquarius. February 6th, Elias Disney was born. He is the farmer and father of Walt Disney. He is also an Aquarius. April 12th, Junius George Groves was born. He was an American farmer and entrepreneur, remembered as one of the wealthiest Black Americans of the 19th and early 20th centuries. He is known as the Potato King of the World by 1902.
Potato King.
He optimized potato growth methods, outproducing anyone else in the world.
Wow.
Yes, he was an Aries. July 31st, Thobald. That is the name. Thobald. 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 T-H-O. Bald. Thobald Smith was a pioneering epidemiologist, bacteriologist, pathologist, and professor. He is widely considered to be America's first internationally significant medical research scientist. He's a Leo. August 25th, we have Charles Albury Comiskey, a.k.a. Comey or the Old Roman. He was He's an American Major League Baseball player, manager, and team owner. He was a key person in the formation of the American League and also the founding owner of the Chicago White Sox. He's a Leo. And Comiskey Park is named after him.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that.
And our last birth of importance for this year, September 17th, the person that we will talk about in the future. Henry McCarty, a.k.a. Billy the Kid, was born. He's an outlaw and gunfighter of the American Old West who killed 8 men before he was shot and killed at the age of 21.
Wow. You think of him being older.
I know. It's kind of crazy to see some of these now and realize just how young they were.
Mm-hmm.
Our deaths in 1859. January 29th, William Cranch Bond. He was an American astronomer and the first director of the Harvard College Observatory. June 8th, Walter Hunt was an American mechanical engineer and inventor known for inventing a fire engine, the first home knife sharpener, the precursor to the Winchester repeating rifle, the early fountain pen, the first rotary street sweeping machine, mail sorting machine, and ice plows.
Wow.
He invented all of them.
Quite the tinkerer.
You know. And let's see, September 2nd, Celia Slater Bacon. That is a fun last name.
I love it. What's shaking, Bacon? I'd say it too every time I saw her.
She's an American writer of plays and short stories and a Shakespeare scholar. She is best known for her writing on the Shakespeare authorship questions, which is the argument that someone other than William Shakespeare wrote the works that are attributed to him.
Conspiracy theorist.
Mm-hmm. And November 28th, Washington Irving died. He was an American short story writer, essayist, biographer, historian, and diplomat of the early 19th century. He is best known for his short stories, Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Ichabod Crane. I mean, you can't not sing his name if you've seen the cartoon.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into our case for this week. February 27th. Yep.
Wait, are 27th. You sure?
Yep. 27th.
Okay. 27.
What's funny is I say 22nd because there is a 22nd. The 22nd is, I'm pretty sure, of importance earlier, like later in this case. So apparently my brain was skipping forward. February 27th of 1859. Congressman Daniel Sickles shot and killed U.S. District Attorney Philip Barton Key in Lafayette Square after finding out about the affair Key was having with Sickles' wife, Teresa. The Sickles-Key Scandal and eventual trial is the first time temporary insanity was used as a defense in the United States.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. We are in Washington, D.C. for our case this week. And since we've already covered D.C. in a couple of episodes, we are going to dive right into our case. If the name Philip Barton Key II sounds a bit familiar to you, it's probably because of his father, lawyer, author of the Declaration of Independence, and writer of a little thing we know as the Star-Spangled Banner, Francis Scott Key.
Oh, say, can you see?
You know, this is one of the reasons that this case gained a lot of notoriety and became known as the scandal of the decade.
Oh, of the decade.
The decade. Philip Barton Key II was born in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., and named after his great uncle who fought in the Revolutionary War and held positions in political office. This whole family, for reference, held so many positions in political office. It is not even a joke. Like, there were things I had to, and so many people in this case that held political positions that I could not list. One, I don't even know what all the positions do. But two,
right.
There were so many different ones that it was like, why am I listing all of these out? Like, they would bounce around in different places and then they would kind of end up. So I kind of, in some of them, I put like, this is where they started and this is where they ended. Like,
there you go.
And a bunch in between. But yeah, the whole Key family was very into politics, and served all throughout politics, all throughout the family's history. So on November 18th of 1845, Key married Ellen Swan, who was the daughter of a prominent Baltimore attorney. In 1853, President Franklin Pierce appointed Key to the same position his father once held, the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. His appointment was confirmed by the Senate in March of 1854, and he served in this position until his death. But by the time of our case in 1859, Key was a widower with 4 children to take care of.
Oof.
Key was known to be flirtatious with women and was, allegedly, one of the most attractive men in Washington at the time.
So he was that at that time. He was the Hamilton of that time.
Yeah. Martha Washington would have named a cat after him. It is for sure. He, and I will say, based on the photos that I saw, and even though the photos I saw were, obviously not like photos, they were drawings. Was it? Because they did have daguerreotype photography at this point. So I'm pretty sure it's just a drawing. I can't remember now. But he wasn't a bad looking guy. Like, I could see, there's some that you see where they're like, he was the most attractive guy. And you're like, really? And then you remember, they didn't really have good glasses back then. So that's probably the explanation.
They didn't have vision insurance.
But this guy, he was, I could see it. I could see that he would have been a very attractive guy. And yeah, he was very well known. His family was well known.
Well connected. And if he was a good talker,
yeah. Well, this is a good time to introduce the other half of our case this week, Daniel Edgar Sickles. Sickles was born in New York City to Susan Marsh and George Sickles. His father was a patent lawyer and also a politician. Like I said, politics everywhere. There are varying reports regarding the birth year for Sickles, and some you'll see it as 1825. However, historians have surmised that he lied about his age so that when he married a woman who was actually half his age, it wasn't looked down upon. Yeah. So it's, quite
gross.
A lot. Yeah. He went on to study law in the office of Benjamin Butler and was admitted to the bar in 1846, and then was quickly admitted to the New York State Assembly in 1847. On September 27th of 1852, Daniel Sickles married Teresa, I believe it's Bagioli.
When she was 12 years old.
Well, Both families were very against the marriage and voiced their opinions. And seeing as Sickles was 32 at the time and Teresa was reportedly either 15 or 16.
See?
It's not hard to see why. It was noted that Teresa was, quote, reported as sophisticated for her age, speaking 5 languages.
They always are.
I put, regardless, she is a teenager who married someone roughly 16 years older than herself. Yeah. And we'll see how well that works out for both of them. So Sickles bounced around in politics for several years until he was elected in 1856 to the 35th U.S. Congress for New York. The Sickles-Key Scandal is not the first that Sickles found himself a part of. He was condemned by the New York State Assembly for entertaining a sex worker named Fanny White in the state assembly chambers.
Oh, my.
He also allegedly took Fanny to England while leaving his pregnant wife, Teresa, at home.
That's a horrible name to have going to England, too.
He even introduced Fanny to Queen Victoria.
Oh, no.
And used the last name of his political opponent as Fanny's instead of her assumed or legal name. So when he introduced her, like say his opponent was Mr. Smith, he introduced her as Fanny Smith. Like she was related somehow to his opponent. It's very odd. Wow. It's very odd. So, yeah, it was known by many that Dan Sickles was a serial adulterer and was seen frequently with many different women. He would accuse Teresa often of affairs of her own, but she denied them each time. This brings us to the events on February 27th, 1859. To the untrained eye, Teresa and Dan Sickles had a charmed life, living right near Lafayette Square with their 6-year-old daughter. They entertained celebrities and politicians at their home and were well known in social circles. In fact, their home was just down the road from a little thing called the White House. Like stone's throw away. But since we know how this story ends, I put not all was quiet on the Western Front in the Sickles household. Teresa was known to hold a reception each Tuesday morning and host a fancy dinner every Thursday night, a.k.a. Leah's Dream World.
I mean, like somebody else was doing all the cleaning and such.
One source noted, quote, she was especially celebrated as a hostess who was capable of charming the most sophisticated guests while simultaneously making the most socially inexperienced feel at home.
Oh, that would be me. That'd be me.
Yep. She would not be you. Attendees or the other high society couples in the city, and if their husband, this is important, if their husband was unavailable, whether traveling or dealing with political priorities, it was customary for the wife to be escorted by another bachelor in town.
Okay.
So if their husbands were not available, it was normal
for protection.
I put safety, maybe?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was, just for protection.
I'm sure that's what it was intended for.
Yes.
Not probably what it ended up
being. Yeah. Well, because they were already a married woman, and so a married woman could be out on the town with whoever she wanted to be out on the town with.
Yep. Philip Key and Dan Sickles met in March of 1857 when the two played an all-night game of whist. It would not surprise me if you've not heard of this game. I had to look it up. It is a traditional card game that eventually had an offshoot called bridge whist, that formed into the game of bridge that we know today. So it's kind of like an earlier form of bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So the two men met playing a game of bridge. As you do. An all-night game of bridge. They apparently got crazy. So Key met Teresa not long after, and he became Teresa's escort to the Washington social events while Sickles was traveling in London. So our friend, the allegedly most handsome man in Washington at the time, was Teresa's escort while her husband was out of town.
Well, best hostess, handsome man, makes sense.
Well, soon the two were inseparable. And by the spring of 1858, they were in a full-blown affair. The two rented a house at 383 15th Street for their frequent rendezvous.
It was just to plan the next ball.
Key would pass by the Sickles residence, signal to Teresa by waving a handkerchief, and if an appropriate signal was returned, they would meet at the house. This is very important as well. Keep this in mind. The secrets the couple shared were going to come to light on February 24th of 1859. So, the Sickles had hosted one of their famous dinner parties, and the group decided to go to the Willard Hotel to dance. Teresa went ahead with some of the other guests, while Dan stayed behind, choosing to walk to the nearby hotel. But as he was getting ready to leave, a messenger arrived at the door. He received a yellow envelope, and since he was headed out for the evening, he put the envelope in his coat pocket and headed to the Willard Hotel. The Sickles came back early the next morning. Teresa went upstairs to bed, and Dan went to his office to catch up on some paperwork. He remembered the messenger and pulled what is called a poison pen letter. I'll explain in a moment. From his jacket. So I had to look up what a poison pen letter is because I've never heard that term. Have you heard that? Like, I know you read kind of a lot of things that you'll read are kind of you like historical period.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a poison pen letter?
Like, is it, if I am not mistaken, it's either a breakup letter or like a threat letter, like I know something and I'm kind of like a not ransom, but I know this.
The word you're looking for is blackmail.
Blackmail, that's it. That's the word. I couldn't think of what it was.
It's not blackmail because blackmail requires some amount of extortion to take place.
Yeah, but kind of like, I know this is going on.
So yeah, it's basically like, so just to bring it back. So the Reynolds letter, not the pamphlet, the Reynolds letter was a blackmail letter. That's because Reynolds was like, I know, and if you want to keep doing this, give me money and I won't say anything. So a poison pen letter is typically an anonymous letter that is given, that contains information that is like damning or treacherous or dangerous in some sense. So it's not asking for anything. It's not looking for anything, but so they say it's like a poisoned pen was writing it. So it's
that I need out.
It's something bad. like murder is bad. Poison pen letter bad. So the letter read, because yes, we do know what the letter said. Quote, "Dear Sir, I hope this letter finds you in good health and a prosperous enough." I'm just kidding.
No. Wrong
one. That was the blackmail one. Dear Sir, with a deep regret, I enclose to your address the few lines, but an indispensable duty compels me so to do, seeing that you are greatly imposed upon. There is a fellow, I may say, for he is not a gentleman by any means, by the name of Philip Barton Key, And I believe the district attorney who rents a house of I am not saying this word. It is an N word. Not that one, but one that is not used today. And I will not use this word. So I will say a black man who rents a house of a black man by the name of Juno A. Gray, situated on 15th Street between K and L Streets for no other purpose than to meet your wife, Miss Sickles. He hangs a string out the window as a signal to her that he is in and leaves the door unfastened as she walks in. And sir, I do assure you with these few hints, I leave the rest for your imagination. Most respectfully, your friend, RPG.
Okay.
I love the subtle burn. There is a fellow, and I may say, for he is not a gentleman by any means.
He's a fellow, but he ain't no gentleman.
Dang. And I do love the end. I leave the rest for your imagination.
Yeah. Told you enough to get your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, it's still unknown who RPG is even to this day. No one knows who wrote the letter. There's been a lot of speculation, but not any real definite, like it never came out. The person never said, I wrote the letter, like never. And we'll see through the names of the people in this case, no one has similar initials either. Because I tried to like see if it was someone that they knew, couldn't figure it out. But that letter put into motion a series of events that would end a man's life. The details were very convincing of the events occurring between Key and Teresa, but Sickles needed proof. Sickles enlisted the help of his friend, George Wooldridge. He asked George to check out the house in question and ask around to see what he could find out. So he kind of used George as like his PI.
Gotcha. He's like, he wouldn't be seen in the area.
Exactly. This is what I know. Go see what you can find out. Luckily or unluckily, depending on how you look at it.
And who you are.
Yeah. The neighbors to 383 15th Street were ready to talk and told George everything they had seen over the past few weeks. George reported back to Sickles the information. He was allegedly devastated. I say allegedly because it was known he was a serial adulterer, which kind of is irritating in a lot of sense. Well,
I was going to say probably
obviously for the moral reasons,
because he wanted her to be faithful to him, but he could do whatever he wanted to.
Exactly. Like there's the moral reasons of like looking down upon adultery. I get that. I also understand consenting relationships. People have their own, whatever. We're big on consent here. But I just find it very hypocritical that it's okay for you to gallivant around and even take a woman of the night over to London and introduce her to Queen Victoria, but you find out about this and you're all mad because she can't do that. But again, I get the moral quandaries of it all. I'm just saying
it wasn't right for him to do it either.
Correct. Do not. And you're devastated. You are not. You are not. He confronted Teresa, who denied everything, but Sickles knew too many details for her to keep denying him. She broke down in tears and said, quote, I am betrayed and lost. She confessed that she and Key engaged in an, quote, intimacy of an improper kind, stating, quote, I did what is usual for a wicked woman to do.
Oh, my.
Sickles demanded that Teresa put her confession in writing.
What?
And it comes back. Sickles' feelings shifted to Key and started to believe that Key took advantage of Teresa, even though there wasn't any proof of this, because she doesn't have a brain, Leah.
Oh, she's just a helpless woman.
Just a
she was led astray.
she, there's no he is so amazing. There is no possible way she could have made this decision on her own.
No, she had to have been tricked.
She was bamboozled.
No.
On February 27th of 1859, he walked in front of the Sickles home and waved his handkerchief to try and signal Teresa. At that moment, the congressman was in the house having discussions with George Wooldridge and another political supporter, Samuel F. You're gonna love this last name, Butterworth.
Yes, I do love it.
About options on how to handle Key when he spotted the district attorney out front of his home signaling with the handkerchief. Because remember, that's what he was doing, and then he would wait for the response.
He done waved his last hanky. Just saying.
There's so many things, and I was listening to a episode of they changed the name of it. It's now called I Think Not, but it's Obsessed with Disappeared. And the most recent one where they kind of rebranded because they finished all of the disappeared episodes of the show, Disappeared on ID. They finished it, and so they kind of like had to change to a different format. So anyways, in this episode, Ellen was like, anything that you can change the inflection of any sentence to make it sound like a euphemism. And so she was like, what did she say? One of the ones she was like, she really wanted to give her, oh yeah. She's like, she really wanted him to give her the Banes.
That's horrible.
Or like, it was like, she really wanted him to take her out for sushi. Like all these different things. And so when you said that, you're like, he's waved his last handkerchief.
Well, take that however you want, but I meant it as
we know how you meant it. At first, Wooldridge and Butterworth attempted to dissuade the congressman of violence, warning of potential.
It's not worth it.
Yep, warning him of potential political repercussions. But the congressman argued that the scandal was out, as the affair was already the talk of town.
Oh dear.
So Butterworth told him, quote, if that be so, there is but one course left for you to be as a man of honor. You need no advice. Eek.
Well, that wasn't good advice.
Yeah. Key was still outside and completely unaware of what was going on. Just, he had this handkerchief like outside of his pocket, just wave, put it back in. And then kind of like wave it again, put it back in.
Girl, waiting on my girl.
Key saw Butterworth leave the house and come toward him. The two men knew each other and exchanged pleasantries. Just like, hi, how are you? Well, how are you today? As Butterworth turned away, Key saw Dan Sickles coming towards him. Key thought the exchange would be friendly and extended his hand, asking, how are you? But Sickles was enraged, grabbed his hand, and yelled, you villain, you have dishonored my house and you must die. Sickles pulled a pistol from his pocket and fired. The shot went wide and missed Key, who then grabbed Sickles by the coat in an attempt to stop him from firing again. But Sickles broke free and fired a second time, hitting Key. Quote, don't murder me, murder, Key yelled as he staggered backwards, begging Sickles not to kill him. But Sickles lunged at Key and shot him 2 more times at close range. By the time Dan Sickles was done, Philip Barton Key lay dead on the sidewalk.
It was like an Inigo Montoya moment.
I know.
You killed my father. Prepare to die.
I know. I thought of that too. It is a very dramatic thing to say, but
very concise.
Yeah.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
This is what you did. This is what I'm going to do.
I know. There were several men on the street who scooped up Key and ran him to a doctor. Some of the other men demanded that Sickles hand over his gun. Sickles started telling anyone around him, quote, he has violated my bed, and telling everyone what happened between Teresa and Key until he finally asked, quote, is the damned scoundrel dead?
Oh.
Question. If it was already the talk of the town, why does he need to be telling everyone what happened between Teresa and Key?
Yeah. I was kind of thinking that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Butterworth was still nearby and went to talk to Sickles about the event that had just occurred. And the two decided, after some light discussion, Sickles should probably turn himself in. That's probably a good idea. They took a carriage to the home of United States Attorney General Jeremiah S. Black. Sickles stayed at the Attorney General's home until the police came to escort him to the station. On the way there, he received permission to stop at his own home. Because that's normal.
Well, he was special.
Yeah. He told Teresa what he had done before departing for the Washington, D.C. jail. Although she was in the house, and I'm sure she probably knew what happened.
Probably heard the commotion outside her door.
Possibly. He received numerous perks while being in jail, including being allowed to retain his personal weapon
while a prisoner.
I would call it retaining the murder weapon.
Well, yeah.
And received numerous visitors.
Including his wife, who was still enamored.
So many visitors came that he was granted use of the head jailer's apartment to receive them. They included congressmen, senators, and other leading members of Washington society. President James Buchanan sent Sickles a personal note as well. Sickles spared no expense in his defense. He hired a prominent criminal lawyer and longtime friend from New York, James T. Brady, to take the lead. Edwin M. Stanton, a renowned trial lawyer who later became Secretary of War in the Lincoln administration, and John Graham, a lawyer known for his dramatic appeal to jurors' emotions. All together, 8 lawyers joined the team. This dude had more lawyers than OJ. I mean, man. Robert Ould was the lead prosecutor. Ould had actually served as Philip Barton Key's assistant. So he not only knew the victim extremely well, but he was no stranger to the courtroom, and especially the courtroom that the case was going to be tried in. But he was soft-spoken, and Key's relatives paid for an assistant, James Carlisle, to join the prosecution in an attempt to try and balance their side against the 8 lawyers for the defense.
Wow.
They're like, he's a little bit too soft-spoken. We need somebody else too.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, but he doesn't quite have that oomph that the 8 people over here have.
He doesn't have the je ne sais quoi.
There you go.
So during jury selection on April 4th, 1859, 72 of the 75 men initially called for jury duty said they sympathized with the defendant. 200 potential jurors had to be excused before a group of 12 could be impaneled.
200
because
it was all men, because women weren't able to be jurors yet.
Mm-hmm. In his opening statement, Ould insisted that Sickles should be convicted of murder. His actions on February 27th showed a calculating murderer who had planned the crime for several days. He should not be acquitted. Ould told the jury, quote, no matter what may be the... Oh gosh, my eyes just crossed. Whatever may be the antecedent provocations in this case. So regardless of what provoked it, he should still be convicted and not acquitted. Well, John Graham, remember he's the one that was pretty dramatic towards the jurors. It's the whole reason they hired him.
Mm-hmm.
John Graham delivered the opening statement for the defense. As expected, he painted the picture of a loving family man.
Well, of course he did.
A devoted husband, LOL, and father who confronted a, quote, confirmed and habitual adulterer. He also cited the Bible, arguing that Sickles did what any self-respecting man would do under the same circumstances. His act was the fulfillment of, quote, the will of heaven.
Oh.
Graham offered another possible explanation for Sickles' behavior to persuade those who were not as religious. And this is what made this case so infamous. The poor man was out of his mind when he shot Philip Barton Key. Graham asked, quote, if he was in the state of white heat, was that too great a state of passion for a man to be in who saw before him the hardened and unrelenting seducer of his wife? Graham's opening statement would go on to last for 3 days.
What?
After the 3 days, Graham concluded that Dan Sickles was guilty of one thing: temporary insanity.
How did the judge allow that?
I don't know. I guess this was at a time where there wasn't like a time limit for an opening statement, because I know like closing arguments, you do have a certain time limit.
I'm just saying most judges have control of their courtroom. They're like, hey, I'm gonna need you to wrap this up. You're wasting my time.
Yeah, 3 days.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's excessive.
So this is the first time that this type of defense was used in court in the United States. It would not have taken much effort to demonstrate that Sickles himself was actually a well-known womanizer himself. So, you know, if Philip Barton Key II was a philanderer of the first order, Daniel Sickles was his match. Instead of pursuing this course, however, Robert Ould presented witnesses to attest to the shooting without commenting on the defendant's possible motives. This trial strategy proved to be a costly mistake. Defense witnesses testified that Sickles was a desperate man, filled with anguish about his wife's affair. Ould repeatedly tried to exclude evidence of the affair, but too much information slipped out from the witnesses. Teresa Sickles' written confession was ruled inadmissible in court. So inadmissible means that you cannot have it as a piece of evidence. So that's why they say now that like lie detectors are inadmissible in court. Like you can take a lie detector test, but it's inadmissible because it's not reliable. Or if they can't determine that it is directly related to the case, then it's inadmissible. So her written statement that Dan made her write after she confessed was ruled inadmissible in court. But
it was written under duress.
But it was leaked by Sickles' defense team to the press and printed in the newspapers in full. The defense strategy ensured that the trial was the main topic of conversation in Washington for weeks, and the extensive coverage of national papers were sympathetic to Sickles.
That's ridiculous.
The paper soon boasted that Sickles was a hero for, quote, saving all the ladies of Washington from this rogue named.
Oh, my.
He was a rogue as well. The jury deliberated for a little longer than an hour before returning a not guilty verdict. The acquittal surprised no one. It was clear throughout the trial that the defense team had convincingly portrayed the despondent husband and father as temporarily insane. Courtroom spectators heartily cheered when the jury gave its verdict, and Sickles held a celebration later that day where over 1,500 people showed up to congratulate him.
Wow.
A few months later, Sickles publicly forgave Teresa and withdrew briefly from public life, although he did not resign from Congress at the time. He was still in
Okay,
Congress.
wait a minute. So, like, you say he publicly forgave, like, was this like in the papers, or did they have a party saying like
he like publicly forgave
I
her?
forgive you?
Yeah, and yeah, it was made a whole big deal about. Yeah,
awesome.
His political career, let's see. The public was more outraged by Sickles' forgiveness and reconciliation with his wife than by the murder. His political career took a bit of a hit, and even worse when he reconciled with Teresa. He was later commissioned a major in the Union Army during the Civil War, and he lost a leg at the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863.
Oh.
Although he had disobeyed orders, Sickles had helped save the fight. He earned the Medal of Honor for his bravery in battle, but he received the award 34 years after the fact.
Oh.
He eventually retired from the Army with the rank of Major General. It should not be a shock that karma made its move on Sickles when he was involved in another sexual scandal later in his career.
Uh-oh.
While serving as the United States minister to Spain in the 1870s, he seduced the deposed Queen Isabella II.
Oh, her, not like her something, but her. Oh, okay.
He eventually gained the nickname Devil Dan.
Oh, no.
Sickles died in 1914 at the age of 94. A New York Times article observed that, quote, nobody with warm blood flowing through his veins can read the obituary notices of General Sickles without a certain thrill of admiration. He was truly an adventurous spirit. Under the right inspiration, he might have been an intrepid explorer or founder of thriving colonies. Despite the man's long list of accomplishments as a lawyer, politician, and diplomat, there was always a roguishness about him. The Times concluded that Sickles, quote, never quite lived down the effects of his mad action in 1859.
Well, you think?
As for Teresa, she came out of the ordeal a, quote, fallen woman.
Yeah.
Because double standards.
Yeah.
You know. The couple might have publicly reconciled, but behind closed doors, they were estranged. The Sickles-Key Scandal took place when Teresa was only 23.
Oh, my.
She died of tuberculosis in 1867 at the age of 31.
Wow.
And that is the Sickles-Key Scandal.
Double standard.
Yep, she was considered a fallen woman.
Yeah.
But I want to know how many other women were out there catting around with their escorts as well while their husbands were out of town. And I'm sure at this time, the way that things were going, I'm sure all those women jumped ship and abandoned her the second this came out in the news.
Oh, yes.
Because
you don't want to be attached to any sort of scandal.
And if they're looking at her, they can't look at me.
Mm-hmm. You would be given the cut direct.
I mean, just how I hate a double standard anyways. And I say that because, and I'm not saying this in the sense of, I mean, yes, as women, like, we understand double standards. I will say I understand double standards from a different aspect because I, at one point, had stepbrothers.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a very big difference in rules.
Rules are different.
And and I was like, what the heck? And I was the oldest that, like, seemingly, I mean, yes, there were times I did things that were like not the best decisions, but also one, I was a teenager, and two, I could have been doing worse things. Like, it was not, it was not that deep. So, I mean, it's just, I understand the double standards in that sense of, it's like, what the heck? Like, Are you kidding me? And I mean, and at this time, I'm sure the double standards were just through the roof. I mean, especially when it came to things like this, because it was well known men were cheating on their wives, and like, especially ones that were high in political power.
Oh, yeah.
And like, you got away with murder because of temporary insanity. Like, he walked free. He received more discipline from bringing a sex worker into the New York State Assembly chambers than he did for murdering a man. Not just any man, the district attorney of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
So not just like, I mean, not that that makes it any better or any, if it were someone that's not, but like, this is someone else of high political power.
This is someone's life.
I mean,
it doesn't matter who. It's the fact that he took someone's life and he didn't get punishment for it.
It
doesn't matter who it is. It's the fact that someone's life was taken.
Yeah. And
then he went on to continue to have a career.
A career.
And then her life was over.
Quickly.
Yeah.
Because she was so young.
Mm-hmm.
She was so young.
Now, bad decisions were made on all parts.
Correct. But also, like, and I mean, I'm sure. Can you imagine?
He was old.
For a moment. However, could you imagine for a moment those parents that were so against them getting married, and then this happens, and I am sure her parents were like, see?
What did we tell you?
We told you he was good for nothing. Like,
told you not to marry him.
She's like, but he's in Congress. And they're like, and?
And what? What is that supposed to mean to us? Yeah.
I mean, just crazy. But it's another case that goes down in the Hall of Fame for crime because of temporary insanity. Like, this is another case that they set a precedent for that to be allowed.
But what makes me happy is it did not make me happy that, they had to go through so many. It did make me happy that they tried to find jurors who, would be honest and say that they were biased, so they did at least try to find jurors who were not biased. But the fact that now there would be female jurors in that pool as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, looking at the advances and the changes that have been made since then make me happy to see how far we've come. Not saying that everything is perfect, because I don't think there will ever be a perfect system. I mean, that's just not possible. This is,
right.
People are in charge.
It is frustrating. This is one of those cases that, yes, it set a precedent, and it is you always wonder. So just kind of like the sleepwalking defense, how that attorney never lived that down, as that was the defense. Like, that's what he's now known for. And he kind of like regretted it after it had already happened that he made that a defense.
Right.
Like, this is another one that you wonder if that attorney regretted it after that point. Like, because so another one that some people may recently remember, the affluenza teen defense.
Yes.
So that's another one that's also kind of like along like the sleepwalking defense or things like that. And it was Ethan Couch. That was the case where so to refresh people's memories, he was driving drunk in a vehicle with something happened. I can't remember
I
fully
don't remember the whole
exactly.
case.
Either way, he was in a vehicle with a lot of other people who were also teenagers. He was a teenager. He was extremely drunk and inebriated and also under the influence of drugs. And he somehow got into a car crash on a road that not only killed some of the people in the car, but also permanently paralyzed one of them. And also somehow the people's house that it happened in front of, the mom and daughter, who were like, the daughter was older, ran outside to go help. And that's what happened. There was a second car crash because of the way that the accident was on the road. There was a second car crash, and the way that the debris like flew, it killed the wife and daughter like in an instant. Yeah. So the husband goes outside and like his wife and daughter are gone, and it's like a murder. It's like a battle scene like on his front lawn. So the defense for that case was that he was too well off to understand the consequences of his actions. Yeah. He was too rich to understand what the consequences were because he was never taught what consequences were. And they call it the affluenza teen defense. And that's another one where I'm like, and even now they've asked the psychologist that kind of came up with that. And he's said, like in interviews, he's like, the second it came out of my mouth, I regretted it. Yeah. He was like, I mean, he still says I hate it. That's another thing where like those things happen. And then it's like, okay, so you just set a precedent. And that's why these cases are so monumental, because we talked about the cases that mirrored each other, that was recent, where the girl was texting the guy. It was
encouraging him to do bad things to himself.
And we were talking about how difficult that case was because it was a precedent setting case of where is the line of freedom of speech? Where is that line? And if we say you can be prosecuted and for speech, is that then going in direct violation of the First Amendment and the freedom of speech? Like, where do we draw the line? And that was the biggest issue I remember with that case, was the judge trying to say, like, one, this is a precedent setting case, and like, where do we draw the line? Like, where?
Because obviously she was wrong, and obviously she had a goal.
Right.
But
it's just so, this is another case where it's just like, man, that is, and you hear it all the time today. People either use temporary insanity, they'll try to use that as a defense, or they'll use the not mentally fit defense.
But they also don't understand exactly what it is either. And that's the thing. I mean, because I understand, doing something, being so angry and doing something, and then being like, I'm sorry that I went too far. That was too much. You know what I mean? Like I have spoken in anger, done something in anger, and been like, too far. I was not in control of myself. The anger took hold. I get that.
So,
but when is it that the anger has taken over and you don't have control of yourself?
So I kind of I just looked at this because I remember I looked it up to see, and this is like FinchStaleLaw.com, I think is where it is. It says temporary insanity is a defense that can be used when the defendant believes they shouldn't be held criminally liable for their actions due to a temporary impairment in their ability to make sound judgment. And a temporary insanity defense may be suggested by a criminal lawyer when it can be established that the circumstances leading up to the criminal act had an immediate impact on the defendant's state of mind. To successfully establish a defense of temporary insanity, it must be shown that the defendant was suffering from a mental defect at the time of the criminal act occurring, and that this defect affected the defendant's ability to differentiate between right and wrong. Let's see. The legal standard for temporary insanity. This is what we're looking for. Each state has the responsibility of determining how it defines and upholds a defense of temporary insanity. There are 4 basic standards that states follow. 1, we have talked about the Monotone rule on this on this podcast. The irresistible impulse test, the model penal code test, and the Durham rule. Both Iowa and Nebraska follow the Monotone standard, and that the Monotone standard defines the insanity plea in criminal cases. So that's the difference, just kind of like as a differentiator between temporary insanity, because I know I said this is the first time temporary insanity was used, and it is. The Monotone defense is very different, where the word temporary is not a part of it.
Right.
So that's taken out. Because the Monotone defense defines the insanity plea in criminal cases as the defendant being unable to distinguish between right and wrong actions due to a disease of the mind. So temporary insanity is only like, it is temporary in the moment. A lot of people say like heat of passion.
Right.
I know that's it's a defense in Texas. I want to say it's something like heat of passion defense or something like that. It is a legal defense in Texas where it's something like that. We're just like a castle doctrine is the same some other places where it's like if someone comes on your property, you can shoot them. That's castle doctrine. But so that is the difference if some people are thinking like, we've kind of talked about this before, but so you have to be able to determine that it was just at the time of the criminal act that like their anger was so overwhelming they could not differentiate right from wrong.
Yeah. Or they were under so much distress that they couldn't differentiate friend from foe or whatever the situation was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have no words. I mean, it's always those, and that is what makes our podcast interesting, because you never know, like, is this going to set a precedent? Is this going to be the new standard? Is this the new law? What, kind of, where is this going to fit in to history? And
I mean, I understand that he was upset, but from the background, there's more to the story. You know what I mean? I mean, if there wasn't the background of the story of his end and what he had been doing, then I might be given more to.
Well, and if it's not a, I think temporary insanity has to be a moment. It's not a,
they sat there and talked about it and then he went out and took care of business.
Exactly. Because he sat there and the old Butterworth told him like, you know what you need to do. That's not, and then you sat there and discussed with him afterwards, well, what should I do now? And they're like, probably go to the police. So, I mean, it
wasn't, he just in a blind rage saw the handkerchief and just got his gun and went off after him. Yeah. That wasn't.
That would be more along the lines of temporary. Like I did what I did. I did what I did. And what did I do?
Exactly.
Like, what have I done? Like what? That's usually
crap, the gun's in my hand.
Like, what did I do? That's usually what temporary insanity kind of like revolves around. Yeah.
Yeah.
And usually it is that moment of like hearing a gunshot that would snap someone out of that.
Yeah. When I came back to myself, I had the gun in my hand.
I don't know what happened. Next thing I know.
Exactly.
And usually when that does occur, there is a great deal of remorse.
Right.
And there was no remorse, it seemed, here. He was too busy worried about explaining why he did it, not that he was sorry that he did it.
Right. Explaining why he was out there doing something as callous and as, unseemly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. If he were like, oh my God, I didn't realize what I did. I'm so sorry. Like, is the guy, is he okay? Instead, he was like, is
he dead?
Is that damn scoundrel dead?
Is he gone? Like, did I finish the job?
Did I do it?
Do I need to reload?
Yeah.
Like, what mischief managed?
I still have it. I still have the weapon. So
like, I can go back.
I'm in the jail and I still have it. So
where'd y'all take him?
Yeah. It's just
yeah, insane. It doesn't seem to be that way.
No, not at all. Not at all. Which is just insane. But
no, it's not.
No, it's not. Not by those standards. I mean, just crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed our episode this week. We do have a website where you can find any and all ONUC information you're looking for.
Which is not insane.
No. If you love our podcast as much as we do, please follow us and recommend us to your friends, family, really anyone. And please go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We would greatly appreciate it.
Very much.
We appreciate you guys so much for being so gracious and allowing me / us the time to take a step back for a little bit. And we greatly appreciate all of you as listeners. You are what we are thankful for in this new year. And we can't wait to see what amazing things we do the rest of this year. So we appreciate you for listening to this week's episode of One Nation Under Crime. We will see you here, same time,
different crime.
And remember, there isn't always liberty and justice for all, especially if you try to plead temporary insanity and you weren't temporarily insane.
No, when you sat there and plotted what you were going to do.
Insane or not. Bye.
Bye.